Hey, what's up everybody? Brian here with Practically Biblical, and today we're talking about how to journal. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm glad you are here. On this channel, we share stories of scripture through creative teaching and offer practical tools, tips, and insights to help you grow in your knowledge and understanding of the Bible. So if that's something that you're looking for, consider subscribing to this channel and turning on that notification bell for the latest videos every Wednesday. And if you like anything in this video, let me know that by giving this video a like. Like I mentioned in the intro, we're gonna talk about how to journal, and I wanna share my routine with you, but there are a few things that would be helpful for you to know before we do that. Number one, journaling has become a really important and valuable discipline for me. It helps me process the events and thoughts and all the associated emotions related to those things in my life. My journal is raw and it's real. There's a lot of really mundane things in there, but there's also some things that I've written that I would be really ashamed of if I had actually said them out loud, which is why I write them down. I'll talk more about that later in the video if you're interested, but you're likely here because you want to know how to journal. So let's begin talking a little bit more about that. So the first thing you're going to need is a journal. And any journal or notebook will do. I've used everything from spiral notebooks to leather-bound notebooks to just pen and paper. If you prefer, there's a couple great journaling apps out there, but I prefer an actual notebook and a pen, so that's what I'm gonna talk about today. The other thing you're gonna need to know is that some people use really helpful and simple acronyms to share how they journal. And if you're interested in those, I have a few links to some videos from some other great content creators in the description. Be sure to check those out too. But acronyms just haven't worked for me. I think it's because it lays out such a distinct pattern and flow that deviating from it makes me feel as though I'm doing something wrong. Does that make sense? Maybe it's just me. And while I don't use an acronym officially to map out how I journal, there is a pattern that I follow. I just don't name it because for some reason in my head, without naming it or putting an acronym associated with it, it leaves room for flexibility in case I want to change it up a little bit. So here's my pattern on how I journal. The first thing I do as I journal is to start with prayer, because to me, if you're on this channel and you know the name of it is Practically Biblical, you can make the assumption that faith is a big part of my life. And so when I enter into my time of journaling and Bible study, I invite the Lord into my time. And I would encourage you to do the same as you sit down to even begin to write or begin to type or however you prefer to journal. The next thing I do is start by recording the date. And I know that sounds really simple, but I want to know when I wrote what I wrote. Then I move into a time of reflection. And this is where I process my thoughts and emotions, usually from the previous day, or I even talk about some ongoing issues or challenges that I might be facing. I've learned over time to be really honest and really pour my heart out. In fact, there are huge sections of my journal that make it sound like I've lived a really poor and tragic life and that I'm angry at the world. And that's because it's my go-to when my emotions are running high. But it also includes celebrations and things that I'm thankful for and praising God for. But those are also usually things that I can share with other people, so they don't always find their way into my journal with as much, let's say, passion. This reflection part of my journal feels a bit like a diary, which, to be honest, felt a little strange and uncomfortable at first, but I found that it helps me to clear my head and set my heart for both the scripture I'll be reading that day and for the rest of the day ahead of me. If I get stuck, sometimes it's hard to know what to write, so I'll just start with the word yesterday. And then I'll finish that sentence with whatever comes to mind. Sometimes it's just a sentence, sometimes it's several pages, and more often than not, it's just a simple paragraph or two before I move on to the next phase of my journaling, which involves reading scripture. I just did a 3-part series on how to read the Bible, which I'll link in the description below. And in that series, I shared 3 ways to prepare, 3 methods of reading it, and 3 ways to discover more. And journaling for me plays a really critical role in my preparation and my study times. So what do I actually write as I read scripture? Well, I start by writing the reference to the passage that I have planned to read that morning. I usually read a chapter or more at a time, so I'll simply write the name of the book and the chapter that I'm reading. If I get on a roll and I keep reading, I'll actually go back and update that line to reflect everything that I read that day. Then as I read, I write all sorts of things. Sometimes I'll copy verses that stick out to me. I'll take notes about the who, what, when, and where of the passage, the characters, the events, everything that's happening. I'll jot down questions that it stirs and things that don't really make sense to me. I'll also write some key application points that I want to follow through on. And many times, it's these notes and questions that trigger me to dig deeper into the context, look up specific words, and start making connections to other parts of Scripture, all of which I talked more about in a previous video. And then as I wrap up, I pray again, sometimes silently, and sometimes I actually write out my prayers. But every time, I'm thankful for the time in the Word, and I pray for any specific things the Lord may have brought to my attention during that time. And honestly, it still catches me off guard how often the passages I read intersect with my daily life and whatever situations I may have just written about a few lines above. So that's how I do it. That's my journaling routine, if you will. But why do I do it? I journal for a number of reasons because I found it incredibly valuable, and I want to share some of those reasons with you now. Number one, I journal for therapy and self-reflection. My journal is a place for me to get my real and raw emotions out, the good and the bad. And it's a safe place where I can express all of that without fear of oversharing in front of anyone. And it actually helps me unearth reasons why I'm actually feeling that way. Socrates once wrote that the unexamined life is not worth living. And I don't know that I would go that far, but I do believe that an unexamined life is not as fulfilling. Getting my thoughts out and reflecting on some of the things that have happened to me and some of the emotions that I've dealt with through those times has really helped me to live a richer and more fulfilling life. And so that's the first reason why I journal. The second reason why I journal is to remember where I've been and what God has done in my life. You see, God commands his people more than 230 times in the Old Testament alone to remember. He says, remember the Sabbath, remember who he is, remember where you've been, remember what I've saved you from, remember that you are my people. And journaling helps me remember all of that, as well as to remember my past, so that it can inform my present, and so that I can discern how the Lord might be leading me into the future. And the third reason why I journal is to keep my own personal commentary of everything I've read in the Bible. You see, if I happen to be reading Ephesians right now, I'll sometimes pull out older journals where I've also taken notes on the book of Ephesians, and it helps to see how my understanding has changed with time and experience and potentially new information. So that's how and why I journal. But I'd love to hear from you. If you journal, what's your method of doing so, and why do you find it so valuable? If you're looking for other ideas on journaling or how to journal, be sure to check out the links in the description from some other creators that I think you might enjoy. And as always, if you found this video helpful or encouraging in any way, be sure to give it a like before you go and consider subscribing for more content like this each and every week. If you'd like to see more, stick around a few more seconds for a couple links that I think you might enjoy. Now go get yourself a journal, and I'll see you in the next video.